I know that's. I'm not saying that life is just a matter of numbers. Like, the more death is, we're doing the arithmetic of.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. So I guess it depends on the context.
Legitimately, what is it that you sense? Do you feel that it's being diminished in ways?
So it depends on the context. So in America, I think American Jews have sort of found humor and subversive sort of dark gallows humor in the Holocaust since like the early days. From like, we've made a lot of art and literature, even Seinfeld, right? There's a soup Nazi. We evoke the Holocaust in a humorous way, and it's one way of coping with trauma, right? And it's become sort of a cultural touch point in American culture, and that was sort of something that the Jews sort of created this model of how to joke about your ancestral trauma and these atrocities, and not making it sort of a sacred cow that can't be touched, right? And I tend to have a little bit of a irreverent approach to the Holocaust because I also grew up with these like dark pictures and like drilled into my head, and it was kind of annoying. And so to me, one way to deal with that is to be like a little irreverent with that topic and maybe callous, right? But I think when it starts to apply to the genocide in Gaza, people start to get it's a little too real, because I'm basically I'm not just joking about you. Oh wow, you're being a grammar Nazi. I'm saying something that I'm raising something that's a very inconvenient truth, which is that Jews are sometimes the perpetrators, right? Like, and that maybe we've become the very thing that used to oppress us, and that is a tough pill to swallow. And I when I make that comparison, I know I'm hurting people, but I feel like it's necessary. I feel like when you love someone, you tell them hard truths, and I know it's painful, and it took me a long time to say the word genocide about this war, even though I believed it was one, because I knew the second I said it, I was causing people pain, and I knew it was hurting them in a visceral, existential way, and like I didn't want to do that, but that now I feel we have to save to what things that we cherish, our values, what we stand for, who we are. We're having sort of like an identity crisis and a spiritual crisis that requires us to have hard conversations, and use hard language as.
Yeah. So you would say that things like the magnitude of suffering, the magnitude of death.
No, I would never say it's apples to apples, okay? I always acknowledge that the Holocaust was not provoked, and the Gaza, what I consider to be genocide, was provoked, right? And I also, as a journalist, I always put this qualifying language, what I consider to be genocide, right? Like, the courts haven't decided, but I consider to be genocide. That way it gives me cover, right? And so I'll say stuff like that, but obviously I acknowledge that, Hamas exists and it embeds itself within civilians. These are realities, but it doesn't change the fact that Israel has culpability for its actions and the way it executed its war, right? And I always point out that there are things that are similar, like the industrialized killing, the invention of new technologies to kill on a mass scale that removes culpability from the killers, right? Like when you use AI to generate targets and have drones committing the killings, then there's no one to feel guilty. No one feels personally responsible, right? And like there are comparisons to the ghettoization of the Jews, right? Where they rationed, there's like man-made famine where 1 million Jews, including many of my relatives, died in ghettos because the Nazis rationed the admission of food and aid, and most people died from exposure to elements and starvation and things like that, and disease, and that's similar to conditions on the ground that are being created in Gaza. I'm not saying it's an apples to apples identical to the Holocaust, but I'm saying there's common strains that if you're a Jewish person whose great-grandparents died and like you were raised with Holocaust, the typical Jewish American narrative about the Holocaust and Jewish history, you should see these warning signs. These red flags should pop up to you, and pointing them out is not anti-Semitic. It's not a betrayal of our values. In fact, it's an expression of our values.
Buttercup, don't you just see on the very face of it that using language like just how divisive this comparison.
Yeah, keep going.
Do you just not see that on its very face how divisive this comparison is, and it's like.
Of course, I see it. My family is like deeply hurt.
It's almost no, but it's like almost like intentionally doing something to get some attention, to bring their awareness to something, maybe, or it has a rhetorical effect. But it seems like this is the wrong way to go about it. To compare Gaza to, the Holocaust.
Okay. So I think I pointed out, I'm always willing, when I talk to my people, not non-Jews. I understand how non-Jews, a lot of people on the outside who have no skin in this, tend to be a bit ignorant about the situation. So to them, I wouldn't run around floating Nazi Holocaust analogies because it's overly simplistic to someone who's not aware of the nuances. But to my people who have been following Israel closely for their whole life and have found Israel's policies increasingly hard to defend and increasingly incompatible with their liberal values, right, over the years, and it's culminated in the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust, as it's described in mainstream and widely described. I think it's a fair conversation to have as people whose identity is so shaped by this major traumatic event that nearly wiped them out in Europe, including my great-grandparents, okay? This is it shapes our narrative about who we are, Daniel. This is a formative part of our identities, and it shapes our values. It's the way we teach our kids to conduct themselves. It's the way we teach our kids to look at the world, and to suddenly turn a blind eye and close our eyes when we see red flags or similarities, regardless of it, whether or not it meets the legal criteria of a genocide, is to betray our values. It's to betray the core of what it is to be an American Jew, Daniel. So I'm just teaching you, maybe you don't know a lot of American Jews, but this is core to our identities and core to our value system. I want to ask.
Sorry, Marcus. I'll land here and this last question.
Oh, go ahead.
The idea is, all right, well, you want to inspire within Jews this idea that, hey, look what we're becoming. We're becoming just like those that.
What's the process?
We're becoming Nazis. That's what you're saying to the Jew, and you're expecting that to be something that is going to be edifying or fruitful in any sense, and it's not. Why would that ever be? Why would that ever produce the type of change or the type of awakening that you want? By comparing Jews to the people that mass executed them, why? Why would you think that would be a helpful way?
First of all, Daniel, I'm actually against calling any particular people Nazis, right? When people call me a capo, I think that's wrong. It's criminal. When I am against using words like Judeo-Nazi, which is popular in the Israeli left, right? I don't use these words. I think it's flattening, and I think an individual, we're all parts of systems, and we need to take that consideration, and we're not God, right? But I think it's instructive to use our cultural heritage and our history the way we've been taught to use it, and this is foundational. And I'm sorry that you find that offensive, but this is something we've been doing throughout our history, and I think if you learn a little bit more and you read the article above, you'll learn about how this has been foundational to the way we talk about ourselves and the way we interpret and make our great-grandparents' tragedy meaningful, Daniel. And so for you to take that away is taking away the meaning that I make out of my great-grandparents' horrific killing.
Buttercup, you're very...
Fair enough. I'll read it. But thank you for answering my question.
Buttercup, let me know. Not going to be about you personally.
I think you should pass on. Buttercup, you're very, very thoughtful, but I think you should put the Reconquista in a larger context. And I'll be very succinct here, Buttercup, but as soon as the Muslims succeed in taking over Israel, they'll go on to reconquer Spain and Christian areas. It doesn't end with Israel, Buttercup.
This is not the convo. You're going down. This is a narrow convo. It's about, I wanted to talk specifically in a dialogue that's been happening in the Jewish community since the Holocaust. I wanted to continue the conversation and expand it, zoom out a little bit from people who have experienced other types of genocide and atrocities in their family history, and how they are sensitive to it, and the way they navigate these delicate sensibilities around talking and comparing to their families' traumas. Okay, that's the conversation. I don't really care to vilify any particular group right now.
Have you spoken about Did Leibovich come up or not?
Yeah, I did. I mentioned it, but I think you should talk more. I wanted actually to ask you earlier because I was talking about how in America, how we learn about Holocaust education, and we see it specifically as something that we should, as instructive, that we should compare to subsequent. We learn it in the context of the Rwandan genocide and the Armenian genocide, and this is part of our culture. This is part of, for many of us, is part of our Holocaust education. And I think in Israel, I just wanted to know if it's a little bit more taboo to compare things to the Holocaust, or if it's more accepted. I want to know.
Nothing is compared to the Holocaust here, and there's no such thing Holocaust education. It's just a Holocaust, and it's always there.
No, there is. There's deliberate programs to send high school kids to Poland. There are curriculum. There are.
Did you go to school in Israel? Did you go? Do you have children to school in Israel? No. Then can you let me talk?
But these
I literally said one sentence. One sentence.
She's right. Like, give her a chance. Go ahead, Nemrod.
Mute, dude.
אני מקשיב.
Okay, mute. You have background noise. Thank you. What he was referring to is that in senior years in high school, usually 11th grade, mine was 11th grade, certain students, not all of them, usually it's those who can afford it, and sometimes there's a pro bono, go on what they call, I'm sorry, but it's a Holocaust industry. They take you for a week, your whole class. You go and see concentration camps, ghettos. We went to all over Poland and a little bit of the Czech Republic, and it's insane. Looking back at it, you understand the level of indoctrination that happens there. It's weird.
But whereas
Thank you for agreeing with me that there is. Thank you for agreeing with me that there is deliberate Holocaust education,
Okay, good,
which is
good.
exactly what my
The state doesn't pay for it.
Excuse me.
The state doesn't pay for it.
Emrose, excuse me. I was making a modest point. You said that there is no Holocaust education. I disagree. There are Holocaust education programs all around the country, including the one that you mentioned. So don't lie.
So let her.
Don't
Okay,
lie.
so if you'd waited long enough, you'd hear her make the point. Now stop.
First of all, the state doesn't fund it.
Fucking liar. I didn't say the state funded it. You are a terrible. Emrose, if you have no capacity to actually listen, seriously, you are really difficult to have a conversation with. It's your way or the highway. This is not how you convince people. This is not how you convince people. You
Another room, please.
Dude, you are unbearable.
Okay,
and it's not about your politics.
Final warning.
It's not your politics. It's your approach. Unbearable.
You're being petty. Okay, Nemrod, I have a question.
Sentences.
Okay, but Nemrod, I have a question about your.
Oh, Jesus,
Shut up, dude. All right, you're going down. Sorry. So, Emrose, I think what the dichotomy I wanted to point out is that in America, in a lot of liberal Jewish education programs, we talk about it as instructive, as this is something that could happen to anyone, and it's a warning about the human capacity.
No, that doesn't.
And the way you heard it is, I think,